Hello, are you looking to grow a brand? Are you wondering, is it possible to build a business around your expertise? In this video, I interview Mike Kim. He's the author of this book, You Are the Brand. He has an 8-step blueprint that shows you how you can present your unique expertise and build a highly profitable and personally fulfilling business. But first, you have to realize that you are the brand. Let's jump straight into the interview. All right, Mike. So a lot of people have trouble with understanding just the concept of branding. There's so many books about it. So before we kind of get further into your book and the content and how it can help people grow a business and grow a brand, would you break down a little bit about your view and how you view branding or creating a brand? What is it? What is branding?
Yeah, branding is just about identity, and it always has been. We all kind of understand this idea of how farmers would brand their livestock. They would literally burn an identifying mark into the butt of their cattle and say that this is my cow. And in the research of the book, I discovered this gentleman, Josiah Wedgwood, who is an English potter born in the 1700s. And he's actually credited as one of the forerunners of modern marketing. This guy entered a pottery contest hosted by Queen Charlotte. He won. And in a stroke of genius, he started to call all of his pottery Queensware after that. And so he branded, identified all his own pottery with that name. He pioneered these concepts of money back guarantees and free delivery. It wasn't Jeff Bezos, believe it or not. And really, that started the move into businesses and companies and products being identified by a certain name. Now, when it comes to personal branding, it is still all about identity. But what is a personal brand? We're not selling anything necessarily tangible. We're selling oftentimes ideas or perspectives or philosophies and so on and so forth. And so to me, a personal brand is really a compilation of your ideas, your expertise, your reputation, and your personality. It's those things combined together that sort of create this identity that you carry. And, speaking of Bezos, like I think it was him. You know how the internet is, like there are all these quotes floating around. You don't know who really said what.
Yeah.
But so I didn't put this in the book because I couldn't properly attribute it. But I think it was Bezos. That's what the internet seems to mostly say, but I couldn't find any citations. Someone asked, what is a brand? And the answer was, well, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And to some degree, I agree with that. But now I think that, the 2021 and beyond definition is a brand is what people say about you before you even get in the room. And if they don't have anything to say, you won't even get on the room, let alone the stage, let alone in front of an audience. And so for us as personal brands, it's very, very important that we have an identity that precedes us.
Yeah. And I think that's the hard part, is actually figuring out that identity that you want to precede you. And sometimes people have multiple things going on. So when we think about clarity and messaging for a brand, what are some things that you do, or how do you help businesses, leaders, or other experts that are actually trying to clarify and understand what messaging should be in their brand?
Yeah, messaging is, I always say, like, it's really hard to sell something if you don't know what to say. Right. And so for a lot of us in this space, it really starts with step one in the framework, which is what I talk about in the book, which is establishing a point of view. Now, this from working with your clients. You want to run ads or you want to help them get their message out there. They have to have clarity on what they're trying to say. And if you want clarity on what you're trying to say, you have to have clarity on what you think and how you view things. And so I've worked with a lot of people who are trying to get into the expert space in some way or another, and they're not really sure what they feel about certain things, or they haven't worked through the discipline of saying what they feel about those things. Here's what I mean. There are a lot of folks out there in society, very, very high functioning, high achieving people who have a real hard time kind of bridging the gap and coming into this expert space because they come from industries that are very highly regulated. Lawyers, doctors, military, teachers in education, right? those industries, very high achieving people, they are not rewarded for thinking outside the box.
Mm.
They're rewarded for, staying in the status quo and keeping the things going, right?
Absolutely.
Middle management, right? In companies. So these folks aren't actually used to saying what they feel. They're not even used to thinking, about what they feel. They're used to towing the company line. Then they meet someone like me, and I'm like, well, just share what you feel and share your story. And it's like asking them to climb Mount Everest. It's a huge leap. So I use 3 questions to try to draw out their point of view. The first question is, what pisses you off?
Mm.
The second question is, what breaks your heart? And the third question is, what is the big problem you're trying to solve? And I use these kinds of emotional words on purpose because we want the message to come from the core. We want to figure out what their real point of view is. So when I ask someone what pisses them off, I'm really referring to the injustice that you see in the world.
Mm.
And when I ask someone what breaks your heart, I'm really talking about like the compassion that they have for people or a certain cause or initiative. And then what's the big problem you're trying to solve? That's your business, right? Because business is nothing more than solving a problem for a profit. Now, there are problems that are not profitable to solve, which is why we have nonprofits.
Yeah.
Right. And the best nonprofits are actually very clear on those answers. So I just try to take that into the business space and help people establish their point of view.
So I love that idea of, and this was I think a nugget in what you said that I never considered, is the idea that some situations, some solutions aren't worth solving profitably. So therefore we have nonprofit. And a lot of people come with these ideas of, I want to follow my passion, I want to do this thing, and it's not profitable. So could we talk a little bit about so let's say they've answered those 3 questions. Maybe you might share a little bit about your year by year or kind of how you've done it, but where does a person start? They've done your 3 questions and now they're ready to start and they want something that's profitable. Does a person just go out there and just throw stuff against the wall and hope it work? Or where do they go? How do they do that?
Yeah, yes and no. Because as much experience as I have and other people may have, business coaches, marketing consultants, you name it, we don't really know until we know. Mm-hmm. If we all had a crystal ball and could see the future, great, right? I'd be happy to help, as many people as I could. In essence, once you have the answers to those questions, then I lead people into taking the answers to those questions and weaving them into personal stories. Because if you're going to be a personal brand, you're going to be a coach, a speaker, an expert of some sort, people need to feel a personal connection to you. This is why we still, when we look up a celebrity or somebody online, we go to their Wikipedia page, we scroll down to that tab that says personal life. We do this. Mm. And so we have to wrap these stories, these answers into personal stories. Personal stories are what keep you, make you unique. They keep you above, everybody else. They make you very distinguishable in the space. And so when I talk about stories, it's like there's 3 stories. There's a founder story, there's a company story, and there's a customer story. And we want to take the answers to those questions. What pisses you off? What breaks your heart? That is your founder story. That's why you got into the industry that you're in. What's the big problem you're trying to solve? That is your business story. And your customer story is the transformation story that takes place, in someone who has experienced your product or your service, right? Mm-hmm. And so you want to share these stories. And yes, you do want to put them out there and see what sticks, because you have to validate these things. I meet so many people who try to build a business, launch a course, create a product, a coaching program, you name it, a keynote, and they're doing it in an echo chamber. You have to get onto the field. You have to, even if it's as simple as sharing it on Facebook or LinkedIn and seeing if people are going to like that post or the way that you're saying certain things, if it's going to resonate with people, you need to validate it. And to me, that is the value of social media. Of course, people get to know your content, people get to know you. But for me, social media is a proving ground. It's a lab. It's a huge test lab for me to throw ideas out there. It's why I create so much content. In fact, with the book, and I don't talk about this a lot, but because nobody asks, but you did. When I was writing the book, there was this whole phase of the book writing process where I went back into my Instagram feed, my Twitter feed, and I looked at like 2 years worth of posts, and I just copied and pasted every single really high performing post. I was like, oh, wow, a lot of people liked this post and reshared it on Twitter. That one line has to go in the book. And that's how I stuffed the book with a lot of one-liners and good ideas, because social media I'd used as a proving ground for 2 years. I'd used it as a proving ground. And so I knew that these ideas were going to work. People loved them. And then I put them into the book. And so that's really how I validate content. And it's how people should validate their message.
So you bring up a few points, and one that I really like is this idea of using social media as a proving ground. It's the thing that I always recommend, even if someone's wanting to run ads, is I want to know, did it work on a free platform and people liked, engaged, commented, or shared? So in that, you're Mike Kim. You have a podcast that's ranked internationally. You've spoken on all types of stages. Now you're the author of a book. You've worked with some of the biggest companies and brands in the world. People are going to engage with you. People are actually going to want to be in your circle. But for people that are wanting to do what you're saying, there's so much noise. It's hard to break through. It's hard to get anyone to, I see people posting every day and there'll be like 4 comments or 4 likes. So what are some ways that you take those stories you're talking about, taking those unique perspectives, and actually start breaking through? And you're a great writer. I think I need to say this too, to everyone actually watching this. Not only does Mike know tons about branding and has consulted with tons of companies, but he's an expert copywriter. So let's say I'm starting out, I'm looking at you and I'm like, well, how can I do what Mike's doing? Can you walk us through just some copywriting ideas or tips of how we could potentially break through and have people engage with our social media posts?
Yeah, and I thank you for those kind words. But here's actually one of the central concepts of the book, and I feel like this needs to overlay a lot of it, because people will feel there is a temptation to feel like, oh, I have to be a great writer, or I have to do certain things, and actually that's not true. That's not true. So here's what I mean by that. When it comes to a personal brand, I see people try to build a brand one of 2 ways, and neither of them really work. So I'll share a third that I really think is what we should do. The first group of people, they present a false version of themselves. And as an extreme example, these are folks who will rent a mansion on Airbnb, stage a photo shoot, and sort of imply that it's their house. Join my mastermind program. Here I am waking up, and like that's just wrong. And yet, to a lesser degree, you see a lot of people out there doing the same thing in the same spirit of presenting a false version of themselves. They will talk about how they have a 6-figure business. Yeah. It's not a 6-figure business if you've hit 6 figures over 10 years. It's 6 figures in 1 year, buddy. You know, and like I'll hear people say that, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
Then on the flip side, you know, you have people who are oversharing in the name of authenticity. And they're not really fixing a problem. They are selling their struggles rather than a solution. So that group of people is more like, you know, a car accident on the freeway, God forbid, but we've all been there, where traffic slows to a crawl. They get a lot of attention because it's a train wreck. It's like, what is happening over there? But people move on. You can't build a following around a car wreck. The litmus test, the best way to build a personal brand is to simply ask yourself, can I build a campfire around it? And around what I'm sharing, around what I'm putting out into the world. And what I mean by that is it warm? Is it inviting? Is it a light in a dark place? Is it a place where people can tell stories, share stories? Is it a place where a community can gather? This is what happens at campfires. Are you a person that people want to hang out with at your campfire? And my challenge to people is, don't build a brand, become the brand. You are the brand. So become the person that you're trying to sell to people. Now, in that, if you happen to be way better at speaking and being on video and on camera, then own it. If you happen to be better as a writer, then own that. Get better at it. um I don't think talent I don't think talent absolves us from having to get better at what we do. I think it clarifies it.
Hmm.
So if you're naturally better on video, then be amazing. Learn the craft. If you're good at writing, get better at it. Um, Now, what happens when you do that is that you really sharpen the saw and you enhance that unique advantage that you have. Right. And as you do that, you become someone who is followable. Dude, this is actually pretty funny because I got to share this quick story with you. Just last night, I'm fooling around on social media. I do this. I use, social media for whatever. Okay. And this is a true story. I went on a date last night. First date.
Okay.
First date with this girl. Okay. I never met her. We met on an online dating app and we, texted a few times, and I was traveling.
Mhm.
So she was away for we chatted like 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, I'm traveling. You don't have to wait to meet me. It's totally cool. No worries. But I won't be back in the area, for like 2 weeks. And we just kind of texted here and there. And I'm trying to find this photo here. So I put on Instagram stories and Facebook stories that I have a first date. Dude, I have never gotten this kind of engagement on my social media in my lifetime.
Really?
Like over 1,000 people saw these stories. Look at all these comments. I don't know if you guys, all these people are giving me dating advice, like on my Instagram and Facebook Messenger comments, right? And I'm like, this has nothing to do with branding. It has nothing to do with marketing. And yet, remember I said a few minutes ago, your personal brand is about your ideas, your expertise, your reputation, and your personality.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I've built a relationship with people, not just based on my expertise or my ideas, but on who I am.
Yeah.
And they're obviously very genuinely interested in my personal life. I put up this, stupid poll, like, should I blog about my dating life? It was like literally 100% yes. Show me the car wreck, show me the chaos, right? But who can't identify with that? Like, there's a lot of people like, oh yeah, after, my other relationships fell apart, and it's just, they trust me in some way to build a place where people can exchange these stories. Now, you might say, what's that have to do with business? I just had thousands of people look at my stuff and feel like Mike is more than just some teacher. He's more than just some guru. His stuff is interesting. This is genuinely him. And I have just this weird personality, man. I put these funny memes on dating out there, and people are just laughing at these posts. And that's kind of, in all seriousness, what I mean about just being yourself. And if that is me.
Yeah.
And if you're better on video, you're better on audio, you're better at writing, whatever it is, really get good at that. Start to get comfortable in your skin and your own voice and double down on it. That's what's really going to help cut through the noise. It's not trying to imitate somebody else.
Yeah, I wanted to say, and this was a question I didn't have, but you talking about that makes me think about it. So, book, you talk about growing a brand, growing a business is the tactics you give in the book. One of the or key things is actually personal development. And I think what you described and what you just shared is a difficult thing to do. But developing personally allows you to do what you're doing, to be authentic, I guess, in a way to where you're aware of what you're sharing. Is there anything that you would say to that? Because I have my ideas of how I've seen you move over years and how you can go in between being on stage at a huge crowd to just hanging out with people. Actually, I'll say this. If you're watching this, go back through Mike's feed, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram, and I think you might have even done it on Facebook, but you had a really good post. And you said, I'm traveling, and one thing I've learned is presence and never eating alone and being around people. And that gets to that campfire. You've created over years this campfire. So even when you post about being present, people are like, wow, that's awesome. But you didn't just get there. It's this personal development that I think you've gone through. Can you speak to a little bit about how you view it and how that's helped you in your business as well?
Yeah. I the story behind that is I had a counselor that I worked with a couple of years ago, and she said, your presence is meaningful to people.
Hmm.
When you're there, it means something to them. So be there with them. And so over the years, and I think even before this, before I heard that, but she helped me put it into words. When I'm with people, I'm with them. I
Hmm.
don't look at my phone. And it's part of the reason I lag on emails sometimes when I'm like traveling, because I don't check. I'm just with them. I don't update things all the time. And if I'm with people for 3 days, I'm with them for 3 days, and I just don't get other stuff done. I'm just with them. And I think that over the years,
Hmm.
like I've had to learn that if I want to impact people, if I want to earn the right to speak into their lives, if I want to earn influence, attract it, I need to be able to be willing. I need to pay a price for it. I'm actually an introvert. I recharge alone. I always joke with people. I batch my socializing. When I go to these events, it's like 3 days of hardcore socializing, and then I'll take a break for a few days,
Hmm.
and I just like hole up in a cave or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but those are things that I've had to learn about myself. I have also had to learn that whether I like it or not, I'm a leader.
Hmm.
And I don't like that term because it's very loaded for me because of, situations I've been in the past, environments that I've been in where people have used that word and sort of abused, the power that comes with it and the positional authority. But I realize that I'm a leader, and I have to be careful with what I share and careful with and be mindful and thoughtful. You mentioned authenticity, and this is one big thing that has helped me, especially on social media. There's a difference between authenticity and transparency. Transparency is reserved for very few people in my life:
Hmm.
counselors, therapists, my closest friends, my closest family members. Um, Authenticity does not mean that everyone gets to hear your junk. Everyone gets to know your stuff. That's not what people are looking for. Authenticity. Several years ago, I went through a divorce. It was very painful. About 3 years ago, it officially ended and everything like that. And so it's been a good amount of time. I didn't write about it when I was going through that. I told people I'm going through some hard stuff, but I didn't air it out. And actually, the way that I shared those stories when I eventually did write about it was I wrote things in a way that if my ex-wife read them, she wouldn't feel attacked or
Hmm.
ashamed or embarrassed. That was the standard that I held myself to. And it was, how can I turn this into something that can help other people who are going through this or have gone through it? And it's incredible, man. I mean, in the last 3 years, I've had so many people just reach out to me about challenges that they're having in their marriage or navigating a divorce. And I'm like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, but I can be a friend.
Hmm.
And they're saying, well, you wrote about some things. I remember you wrote about some things, and they were really thoughtful. And can I just kind of share with you what's going on? And I realize I'm not necessarily always trying to fix a problem for people. Sometimes people don't want their problems fixed. They just want you to hold their story. And think about that from a personal development standpoint.
Hmm.
You know, you're I get paid to fix problems. And yet the majority of the time, people don't want me to fix their problem. They just want me to hold their story and hear where they're coming from
Hmm.
and feel what they're feeling with them. And that's how I try to engineer the content that I share. That's how I try to present offers. It's an invitation. It's not an expectation. And that's how I set it up.
Would you talk a little bit about that? Kind of fits perfectly into this idea of what marketing is and what it isn't. Would you talk about that relationship aspect that you do? So as people are listening, and right now it's super popular to have high ticket offers, sell your program, sell your course, do this thing. And a lot of it is geared towards the fastest path to the cash, to do all these things that's not really for the person that they're trying to work with. Would you talk about that idea of what marketing is?
Yeah. So one of my big mantras is that marketing isn't about closing a sale. It's about opening a relationship. And if you think about it, like I didn't ask this girl last night, can we get married? It's the first date, right? It went really well, and there's a second one planned. And if the second,
Congratulations.
thank you, if the second one goes well, maybe there'll be a third, and maybe there'll be a fourth. But
Mhm.
right now, it's not about closing the deal. It's not about like, hey, let's get married or something like that. And we're adults, so we talked about a lot of different things, but you need to let things breathe and have their proper time. And so for me, like when it comes to marketing a program, marketing a service, marketing any kind of offer, I have folks tell me all the time, well, I've got a plan to launch something in 6 weeks. And I'm like, okay, tell me about your audience. Who's your email list? What social media channel do you use? And they share with me, and like I'm like, hey, these numbers don't add up. Okay, like, well, you don't have to have a large list, but how often do you talk to them? Once a month. I'm like,
Mm,
that's not enough. I mean, if I don't call this girl back in a month, it's going to end. I mean, think of like realistically, think about it. If I just don't talk to her, don't even text her for a month after we have a nice dinner last night, and
mhm,
she's gonna be, this guy's not interested in me.
mhm.
Name one relationship that thrives when you don't talk and you don't communicate. It doesn't happen. And yet in business, we think like this. So it's just like, for me, when I talk about marketing and branding, I'm like, guys, this is just very simply common sense. It's just common sense. And so the beginning of that relationship, yes, you have to invest a little bit more because you have to build trust, and there's not a lot there to go on, right?
Mhm.
um we had one nice interaction, one good meaningful interaction. That's not enough to build a longer tier relationship on. You still have to build and build.
Mhm.
So when I say marketing isn't about closing a sale, it's about opening a relationship. It's getting people to know you, to like you, to trust you. I know that's a cliche, but that's our responsibility as business owners,
Yeah.
to make it easy for people to know about us and to stay consistent in communicating. A lot of times it's not two-way. They don't respond, they don't answer your emails, but they are watching,
Yeah.
they are reading.
I love that. I will say, I'll ask you one more question, but for everyone that's still, I'm sure, watching this on YouTube, I want to point out a few things just in case you clicked on this hoping just to see something about branding. But I think if you're watching this now, you know more about Mike. You probably feel closer to him. He feels like someone that you can trust, and you're more willing to do further things with him now. And I think if you read the book, you can see it right there. We'll have links and everything below. But there's so much how to, but and Mike talks about this. The how to is one thing, but there is that development piece, there is that trust piece. And I think most of you now are going to trust him more and be willing to buy more. So think about that also as your branding. So Mike, I do want to ask one more question to you. When a person is starting out, so they've gone through, they've done your questions, and they know what things that they're really emotional about. They've started to actually put stories to those things. They're figuring out their unique message, and they're not trying to be perfect. They're putting it on social media. They're creating a tribe. They're doing all those things that you've said. Now they're ready to start out. Is there any other things that you would say to them or advise them to do as they're starting out, going from zero to hopefully a Mike Kim hero status? What would you say to them?
I would say that in that success is sequential, it's not simultaneous. It's easy to look at these folks who are out there and they seem to have everything. They have a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, great social media accounts, they have a book, they have conferences. This stuff did not happen in one shot for me. The story I always give is that there was this great Chinese restaurant I used to eat at a lot when I was in college called Noodle Gourmet. Shout out to Noodle Gourmet, New Brunswick, New Jersey. And they had this thing on the wall about the Chinese zodiac, and I'm not an expert in the Chinese zodiac. I don't know it. I'm Korean, so I know we kind of look similar, but totally different. And the Chinese zodiac is, the year of the horse, the year of the pig, the year of the rat, the year of the snake, you name it. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And this is when I was first starting out my journey. And in 2013, I was working a full-time job. I was very, very busy. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on blogging. I'm going to focus on blogging for this year. 2013 will be the year of the blog. Hell or high water, a blog post will publish on Monday. And I missed a few days, but by and large, I hit the goal. There are some days I wrote something at 4 a.m, just to get it out before I went to go to work. And then 2014 came along and I was like, okay, this will be the year of the podcast, but I didn't stop blogging. And so I launched the podcast, and actually the blogging helped me help make the podcast so much better. I learned these very critical skills on how to communicate, how to headline my episodes, how to even upload the podcast onto my website. There are a lot of things that I learned from blogging that helped me, launch my podcast. 2015 was the year of group coaching. And I launched these group coaching offers because I'd been blogging for 2 years and podcasting for 1 year. And I had a following of people who wanted to work with me. That was the year I went full time in my business. That group coaching network, that program helped me go full time in my business. Now I had all this free time to do the other things in my business that I always wanted to, but never had the time to do. So in 2016, it was the year of the product launch. And I put together a course and did all the things that the marketing guru said to do if you're going to launch a course. So I did that. And then 2017 was the year of the live event. I held my first business conference. Where did I get those people? It was the people who bought my course the previous year. I invited them to come to the live event. So you see, everything got easier as I went along. 2018 then became the year of speaking. I started to get a lot of speaking invitations. Now, how did you get speaking invitations? People saw photos and videos of me at my own event. And I'd been podcasting by that time for 4 years, 2014 to 2018. Wow. So I think, honestly, Joseph, I think people thought Mike can't be horrible. He's podcasted for 4 years. He has his own event. He can't suck, right? So they would invite me to those events. 2019 became the year of video. I started doing a lot more video marketing. I was taking clips from the speeches that I gave at these various events. Where did you get the video? From the events that I was doing. And I started to learn direct to camera stuff like this a little bit more intentionally. 2020, was the year everyone was locked down. So the 2020 was the year of writing the book. And 2021, this entire year has been the year of launching my book. Right. And so you see here that all of these things were year by year. It wasn't simultaneous. And now as I go into the next year, it'll be really the year of focusing heavily on YouTube. I really want to focus heavily on YouTube. So I did video a couple of years ago and got more comfortable with it, got comfortable in front of cameras, got comfortable, using just Instagram and TikTok to record things. And now I want to do things that are geared specifically towards YouTube. And that's really the year by year thing that I'm building. And you can see awesome. There, it's so easy to feel like you have to have everything at once, but success is sequential. It's not simultaneous.
I love that. And I want to talk more about the YouTube off this video. I want to hear your ideas, but is there any further words that you would like to say as we sign off to people? Any particular place you would like people to connect with you, whether it's your website or Instagram, but go ahead and give us the last words, at least for this recording.
Yeah, pick up the book. It's available everywhere. It's on Amazon. I don't know who prices these things on Amazon, but it's cheaper than it's supposed to be right now. Maybe it was my publisher. I don't know. But for $7-8, you can pick it up on Kindle and just really get kind of the whole framework that I talked about. It's a very easy read. I've done that on purpose to make it easy to digest. I want it to be a blueprint for people. The blueprints aren't just a one and done. You're always continually referring back to it. So I'm hoping that can serve as a guide for people as you build your personal brand. And if you like podcasts, go check out my show. It will be called You Are the Brand. just type in Mike Kim on whatever podcast app you use, and I'll pop up. It'll be the same feed that I've always used. So you can find the show there and give me a chance for a few weeks. I know that most people who subscribe to a podcast listen on average to about 5 shows. So make me one of the 5 for a little while and see if I can just add some value to you.
Absolutely love it. Mike, thank you so much. And until next time, we'll be looking for You Are the Brand podcast, and all the links will be below. So if you want to just find something, just click below. I'll put all his contact information there. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, man.